pretty limited. They're very controlled by the government.
These are the striking realities of life in North Korea. To learn more, I decided to sit down with North Korea documentary aficionado Casey King.
So, what is life like for citizens in North Korea?
Life for citizens in North Korea is pretty limited. They really have no kind of outside influence. They're very controlled by the government. They're really almost kind of watched at all times.
How do North Koreans feel about the society they live in? And how do they feel about their government?
They are very brainwashed. A lot. I believe, and just from outside sources also, that it's more along the lines of fear. They're living in fear of being sent to a concentration camp if they break any rules, break any laws. Recently, Kim Jong-un actually had public executions for people who were caught with a Bible or caught with any kind of tape outside of what's regulated. So a lot of it I feel like is fear-based, more than anything being sent to those camps. So you could say they love the government out of fear. And some of it definitely is brainwashing. They really don't know anything else, but a lot of it too is fear for their life.
And are escape attempts prevalent, or is there any kind of no resistance within the country?
You do. You have spread of Christianity lately. Like I said, you have cell phones that are kind of coming in now that the government is having problems kind of controlling. And then you also have people attempting to go to South Korea because it is a democratic nation, but it's hard to cross the 38th parallel because it's so guarded. It's a demilitarized zone. So you have people trying to escape into China. But that's tough too because they're a communist country.
And as a country, how does North Korea interact with other countries?
You have very little interaction, if any. They follow the policy of Juche, where they're very self-reliant. And because of this, you have starvation and really economic failure within the country.
And how do North Korean citizens feel about foreign countries?
Again, that policy of Juche really implies that they don't need any other countries, and you have a long-standing history of invasion of Korea by Japan, by Russia, by China, and so by the United States in the Korean War. So you have this long history of being invaded, and because of that, they really have become self-reliant, and they feel very negative to any outside influence at all. And a lot of it is love, a lot of it's brainwashing, a lot of it's fear, too. Just completely obsessed with the government out of all of these things combined. And to us, it's crazy, and it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because we of course don't live that way. They don't really know any other way.
Yeah. And it's weird to think about how people within the country, throughout all the brainwashing, still want to escape, and it kind of makes you wonder. Like in 1984, you don't really know who else is against the government, and that's kind of how it is in North Korea. It's kind of unknown how people feel.
Yeah, it's very secretive. It's very dangerous because I think even though they don't really know a whole lot about the outside, it's kind of part of being human that you don't really want to be controlled. You don't really want to have all of that bearing down on you. You live in that fear, but if it's all you've ever known, it's what you've been brainwashed to think, then it's tough.
I decided to interview Chris Emmerling to learn about the connections between North Korea and 1984.
What is life like for the average citizen in 1984?
If you're in the inner party like O'Brien is, life's quite good. They get real coffee, they get good chocolate, they have nice plush apartments, they have manservants. If you're in the outer party like Winston and Julia, it's better. Though I think we can question whether or not it's better than the pros. Obviously living in the pro, you could be bombed and killed at any moment, so that sucks. But it seems as though the conditions in which they live, save for the bombing, aren't that much worse than the inner party. Winston mentions that his house, his Victory Mansion, smelled like raw cabbage, I think, and the drain stopped up on O'Brien's place, so it was a clearly dilapidated buildings that aren't the nicest. And I would think they're comparable to where the pearls stay.
Okay, and can you kind of speak on the nature of the surveillance state that they live in?
It's both all-encompassing and mysterious. So you have the telescreens, which can both hear and talk to you specifically, as well as playing the 2 minutes of hate and stuff. But also, they mentioned the hidden microphones and the hidden cameras, which we never see, but are presumed to be everywhere. And I think that's one of the horrifying things that Orwell's creating, is that the notion that it might be there is almost as bad as the fact that it is there. And so it's the same deal with the thought police. The notion that they might be able to actually read your mind is enough to make you want to cleanse your mind because of that mere possibility. And so it's interesting the way Orwell constructs both this like omnipresent surveillance. It's there everywhere, but also we don't even know to what extent it's there at the points either.
How does like the nature of secrecy and distrust kind of reveal itself in the book? Just with how like an individual citizen who might disagree with Big Brother, like such as Winston, having to live without the knowledge of who else might be aligned with them.
And I think one of the things you see Big Brother very much intentionally destroying are these bonds of brotherhood and these bonds of unity, and replacing them with these bonds of distrust. And if you keep the opposition to you forever divided because of this distrust, then they can never unite and take you down. And that's a key component, I think, of Big Brother's form of control. Everybody distrusts everybody else. It contrasts, Brave New World, where everybody belongs to everybody else, as this method of control. In Big Brother 1984, you don't know who you can trust. In fact, you can't trust anybody, not even your own children. And so you don't have these bonds of brotherhood that might make you come together and do things like rebel, but that also might make you come together and talk to each other in a bar or in a cafe, which they mentioned, and say, hey, this really sucks, let's do stuff. Revolutions have been started in these places. Revolutions have been started by people getting together and talking about how much they hate it, and all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, you hate it too, I hate it too, it's okay to hate it. That doesn't happen in 1984 because you say it out loud, you end up in room 101.
And one thing I've thought about a lot is kind of like whether the citizens in 1984 actually love Big Brother, or if it's something they just feign out of fear, and how much of like that becomes actual love from fear.
It's conditioned.
They are very brainwashed.
I don't know that it would be love in the way we think of it, but a natural response in the way that they're conditioned to just react this way, like your life.
As a country, how does Oceania interact with other countries, and what's kind of like the nature of the citizens' thoughts and opinions on foreign countries, and kind of like how they're conditioned to feel?
Fear. Yeah, straight fear. Except for their allies, which is always shifting. So even your allies, you can't depend on. Again, these bonds will never get close enough. That bond of brotherhood in another country is not stable enough that it won't change everyone. It's fear of the other, fear of the external. I think we see that a lot throughout history. Fear of the other, conceptualization of the other. It's something historians write about and think about a lot. It's something people in literature write about and think about a lot. The way in which we conceptualize and present the other.
Chris's words echo those of Casey, who said similar things about the citizens of North Korea.
So you have this long history of being invaded, and because of that, they really have become self-reliant, and they feel very negative to any outside influence at all.
Citizens of both North Korea and 1984 are conditioned to fear everyone from the outside. In 1984, the enemy, be it Eurasia or East Asia, is conceptualized as being made up of monstrous savages. Events such as the 5 Minutes Hate condition the citizens to truly hate and fear those on the outside. In North Korea, the circumstances are much the same. Through propaganda and brainwashing, North Koreans are trained to fear the outside as well. Chris explains why it is that these governments seek these feelings.
You condition your citizens with this fear so they don't look out at the way it could be, and therefore they can never have any qualms with the way it is, because they don't have any reference point, they don't have any guideposts, they don't have any idea that it could be better, therefore they never wish for better. And I think that's, you know, very carefully constructed. Not just the other is anybody not us, whether it's racially or nationally or gender or, you know, regions of the country, the way in which a northerner presents the other, the southerner, the ways in which the southerner presents the other, the northerner. I think we see that a lot. Those conceptualizations of the other and those the ways in which we don't understand the other and the ways in which we use that other being for our whatever means we want, whether it's comedy through Larry the Cable Guy, you know, or fear through presenting a foreign country as an enemy.
Whereas North Korea uses fear and mind control to control its citizens, the Oneida community is different in the sense that it uses happiness and other techniques.
The Oneida community? I hadn't found anything on this during my research. I was frustratingly stuck. I decided to sit down with historical expert Rick Gill to learn
What
more.
religious beliefs was the Oneida community founded on?
They also believed in the open marriage type of thing, that every man's wife was every man's husband, whatever.
Oh yeah, the complex marriage.
Right.
How would people in the community have viewed relationships between?
They were all interchangeable. They were all like, it was like a community, but they were all together. You'd be with one wife one night and one wife the next, because it was all one community all together.
What did they do with children in the community?
They're brought up by the community, from what I've read. It was like, you know, it was not like one nuclear family, it was like a community effort, even on that.
So they kind of broke up the family structure.
Right, it was like one huge family all intermingled.
I saw something about, they had something called strip culture, and it was kind of like their method of selective breeding. And
Yes. Yeah, they wanted to have a what do you want to call it? Yeah, a model community, you know, with kind of matching up type of things. It's rather interesting.
So they kind of just matched up people.
Right, evidently as far as for childbirth, yeah.
Open marriage, communal child raising, selective breeding, all of these institutions of the Oneida community can be found in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. I decided to ask Mr. Emerling some more questions about Brave New World to learn more about the similarities.
And moving on to Brave New World, what's kind of like the reasoning behind the selective breeding that they put in place with kind of like the whole decanting process?
I think it's the notion that a capitalist society requires a large and cheap workforce, and I do think that both Huxley and Orwell are being very critical of a capitalist system, and I think Huxley in that way is establishing that sort of hierarchical control, that this amount of consumption, this amount of production, this amount of capitalist mechanism requires a cheap labor force that is both large and docile and willing to work. And in fact, in the case of Brave New World, unwilling to do anything, or unable to do anything else besides work.
I kind of thought it was interesting that like Brave New World is this kind of dystopian society, but at the same time, like one of their main tenets is you have to have copious amounts of sex with large numbers of people, and that's kind of something that a lot of people would say sounds more utopian. So, like, why is it that the government in Brave New World does this?
It fits with the whole everyone belongs to everybody else thing.
Every man's wife was every man's husband, whatever.
Keep them happy through happiness. It's the same thing. Like, nobody ever complains about the teacher who does nothing but gives out all A's and never gives any homework. You can keep them happy and nobody will ever say a word about you, but it's still not good. He's creating what seems like a utopia until you start scraping beneath the surface and in fact find out, wait a minute, this isn't right. This isn't natural. There are serious repercussions. It takes John the Savage to show that to us. But the number of people who read Brave New World and see a happy world is a little disturbing, to be honest.
Well, yeah, it's kind of interesting because
Merry Christmas.
I was talking to Mr. Gill about like the Oneida community who were up in New England in like the 1850s.
Yeah, utopian community.
Yeah, and like they had every man belongs to every woman. Their children were raised communally, and I mean, like it was viewed as a utopia by the members inside of it, whereas in Brave New World it's a dystopia. But and kind of like the purpose for its foundation, like the Oneida community, they believed Jesus had already come, and it was okay for them to establish like a paradise on earth. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what they were attempting to do.
Well, I think there's a Buddhist proverb that says that it's something to the effect that desire is the root of all unhappiness, and I think desire of possessions, desire of stuff is the root of all unhappiness.
The similarities are undeniable. In both Brave New World and the Oneida community, all bonds between people have been broken through open marriage, communal child raising, and selective breeding. The fact is, these fictional societies are much more real than one might think.
You know, I think the biggest thing I took away from all this was that, you know, a lot of times these fictional societies really aren't so fictional, and that these places that are almost unimaginable to us can be real, and it's something that as a society we need to be reading this literature and not just saying, wow, this is crazy, I can't even believe this, but rather looking at it and going, where is this in our society? What can we do to prevent it? You know, it was really eye-opening to me, this whole project, just seeing how all these things that I saw as so dystopian and unbelievable are real.